and I'll answer. Okay. I'll just drop it in the chat and I'll answer if anything comes up along the way. And then at the end, we will also just like, if you have any questions that come up, just so we can like get through the entirety of it. And yeah. Okay, so shit, this thing's in the way. Let me get rid of this. Okay, there we go. All right, so as you know, I'm Avery. Welcome. So it's been an interesting journey for me with my like womb awakening and just arriving to a space of having like a very blissful bleed. It's been almost 2 years of kind of really honing this practice. And there's been for sure times that it's been pretty frustrating because I feel like I'm getting to know my body on like a much deeper level than I ever have, and just like going through the waves of like learning my cycle and like working with my hormones. And I'm not someone who just naturally has balanced hormones. It's like kind of something that's always been a struggle for me, especially because of the way that I was put on hormonal birth control like really young when I was 17, and I was on it for like 10 years. So this process of getting into a space that my bleed is like actually very enjoyable and I don't have that many symptoms was a really fucking like not an easy journey for me. But the amount of joy that I have every time I bleed is just, it's gotten like the last couple of months and really the last year has just, every time it's so powerful, and it's such a beautiful moment to pause and really just like feel into my body and like the power of being a woman, and just like the way that we've been so deeply programmed that this is not something that we should enjoy. And really just, I really feel like this is the way that we deprogram ourselves from like the patriarchal society we live in. And it starts in our body. Whoops, hold on, sorry. And yeah, just as everything, it always starts in our body. So this practice to me, like as I put together this masterclass and I took more time to like think about it, I was like, holy fuck, this is the way that I fully like deprogram myself from the matrix. And this has been the catalyst to deprogram myself to like see the flaws within the system and how it's like mostly geared to the masculine. So that's my why. And I really feel like my mission here is to teach women about this so we can have so much more reverence for our bodies and reverence for the cyclical ways of feminine, because on this planet at this moment, we do not respect that. We don't like honor that. So, like I said, how honoring my cycle changed my life. It eliminated nearly all symptoms related to my cycle. I used to have like really gnarly hormonal acne, like super bad on my neck and my chin. And it was just like not pleasant. And I was so self-conscious about it. And I just couldn't get rid of it. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, and it was all just because my hormones were super imbalanced and I wasn't honoring my cycle. I used to have really bad cramps. I used to bleed a lot, like really heavy, like bleed through tampons, like 7 days, and like just gnarly, and like cramps and like back problems. And it just wasn't good. It was not enjoyable at all. It helps clear ancestral karma in my matriarchal lineage. I come from a family that there's a lot of sexual abuse and sexual trauma and just like womb trauma within the matriarchal lineage of my family on both sides. My grandma had ovarian cancer. She died of ovarian cancer. My mom experienced sexual abuse when she was growing up, and she had a really hard time having me. And like, there's a lot of infertility in my problem, which, as we know, like emotional, energetic illness manifests in physical illness. So I really feel like this is allowing me to like clear that energetically and emotionally. And so my womb is healthy. Again, I healed my womb from trauma for medical issues. I had like a medical issue a couple years ago because I had hormonal birth control, which was causing problems for me. And essentially I had an abnormal pap smear, and it was because I had the Paragard IUD in, and I had like precancerous cells, and I got the IUD out and they wanted me to like do all this shit. And I just was like, I'm not going to do that. And I just really, that's like what kind of helped me go down this path of healing my womb. And I went back like a year later and there was no issue, which was really fucking scary. Cause I was like, cool, am I going to have cervical cancer? But I didn't. This process of honoring my cycle, it clears my own sexual trauma that I've experienced. It helped me understand my power as a womb bearer with the direct portal to God, because as women, our womb is literally a portal to spirit. So we bring spirit into form in a physical body through a child or through what we create. So this has really helped me tap into like my power as a feminine bodied being and someone who holds a womb. It is my ultimate expression of self-love and devotion. Like, it's just, when I bleed, it's like I tap into such a deep self-love that literally is just like, it feels, I can't even describe how it feels. It's just like how love for self is supposed to feel. And it just is like so fucking beautiful. And I just want everyone to feel that. It strengthened my channel as an oracle for spirit 100%. Again, because I think when we have moon times that are uncomfortable and like not blissful, we aren't unlocking the power that we have, that the truth of what the bleed is for is, again, to channel and create. So like, obviously create life or create creations and how we're supposed to be here to serve for spirit. So that for sure has opened my channel, and like full oracle, like when I bleed, I have ideas that come through and like things that I need to create that I follow through with, that are God-given creations that spirit's asking me to be a vessel for. It helps me have a deeper respect for Mother Earth and her cycles. Again, because I've learned my own cyclical nature as a woman. I have learned and have much deeper respect for the cyclical nature of Earth, since she is the feminine. It awakened me to the distortion of the current patriarchal paradigm within the systems we currently live in. Again, because the way that the world is set up is so geared to the masculine and so geared to constant output of production. And our bodies, which we will get into, are literally physically not set up to be that way. So the way that things work, it's like constant go, do, produce, make, get money, like greed consciousness, like that literally does not have resonance in our bodies as feminine bodied beings. So it really showed me the ways that like I'm expected to show up as a man, like every day, same thing, constant output, same output. And that's just not how my body's wired. And so it really opens your eyes up to the fact that it is not a woman's world at this moment in time, for sure. So again, you're in the right place if you struggled with painful cycles, if you feel disconnected from your womb and your feminine energy, if you've experienced trauma in your womb, if you're ready to awaken the oracle within, if you desire to have blissful orgasmic bleeds, you desire to live in accordance with the natural cycles we've forgotten in our current culture. So what I'll be sharing is, I'll be sharing concepts about the womb and bleeding, just like a little bit of basics, and I would say like psychology or ideas, concepts behind the womb and bleeding, info about our cyclical nature as women, ways we can get connected to our wombs and support a healthy moon cycle, physically, spiritual, and energetically, because there is the three pillars. We have to support both our physical body. We can tap into it more spiritually and energetically, but we can't have one without the other. So it's very important that we are taking care of our bodies and our wombs as feminine bodied beings with those three pillars in mind. And And then at the end, we'll talk about ways you can work deeper with me if you want to support your womb honoring journey. Also, again, like just saying this, I am not a doctor. I am just teaching this based on my own experience, my own study that has been over the last couple of years. And if you have serious medical issues, that it's best to consult a doctor or some type of support that can help you. Okay, so the womb. As we know, the womb is our sacral chakra, and it's the place where it's where all life starts. Like whether you're an animal, whatever, like all life starts in the womb. And the womb is a place where creation is birthed, obviously through a body coming, like a spirit manifesting into a body, and which is born as a baby, or it is a place where creation can occur, in terms of what we create as humans through our vessel. But the fact of the matter is everything and everyone originates in the place of menstruation. And there's a lot of stigma about menstruation. It's taboo. People don't like to talk about it, but it's literally the source of creation. And your womb is a holographic daughter of the womb of creation, which is literally the birther of the universe. So we have, again, a lot of stigma about the womb and almost like fear and disgust. And we've been so deeply programmed about how it's just a body part and how it's just like gross and ew, like bleeding and menstruation is disgusting, but it literally is where we all came from. And the body is a hologram of spirit. Spirit lives inside us. Again, our body is just spirit manifested in form. So these bodily parts that we have, and these like the womb and like all these different pieces of us, they are just like pure manifestations of spirit. And like I said, the womb is a portal that brings spirit into form through the creation of a child, a soul that comes into a physical body. And I mean, if you really just think about it, the fact that somehow there is a fetus, that a soul and a conscious being somehow all of a sudden manifests and becomes in the womb, it's really fucking crazy if you think about it, that it's literally a portal and a doorway to another world and another realm, like 100%. And the womb blood is what births our bones in our bodies. Again, the womb blood isn't the stigma about our blood being gross. It's literally what nourishes the child and allows the fetus to be built. So, again, we have been programmed to fear, be disgusted by, and be so disconnected by the power of our womb. And curious, what is your relationship with your womb? If you just want to put it in the chat. And maybe any ideas you have as to why we've been programmed to fear it. The space that is like literally the portal to God and the birther of all creation. Yes, exactly. Programmed to fear it because they fear our power. Exactly. And as feminine bodied beings, we are the way of the future. We are the great creators, and the world is at this moment imbalanced, not set up for us, and more geared towards the masculine. And again, that's like very rooted in greed consciousness. And so there's a major focus on money being made and constant output and corporations making money. And so if we were to actually slow down and live by the feminine ways, which are cyclical and not that constant output, corporations would not be making money in the way that they are now. Okay, our blood, I don't know if you knew this fun fact, but menstrual blood is literally so full of stem cells. because it is supercharged with the uterine endometrial cells that go towards the baby's growth if you're pregnant. So there's actually a lot of studies about this because obviously stem cells are hard to get from the body, but menstrual blood is they're doing more studies on menstrual blood and the stem cell content within that because it's obviously easier to get. So like our menstrual blood is so much more than just blood or gross or whatever. Like it literally has the potential to heal people, to help people, and build life. So again, it says that I wrote, it's the builder of life, lifeblood. And also our menstrual blood is a huge indicator of our overall health as a woman. Tracking our cycle is important to monitor our health and our hormones, and it's our fifth vital sign. So our menstrual blood is literally a monthly little test, at-home test that will tell us how our health is. Because if our hormones are off, then our entire body system and functioning is off. So getting acquainted with your blood is one of the most easy, accessible, and powerful ways to check in on your overall health every month. So with that said, I know, again, blood is taboo. What is your relationship with your blood? Do you look at your blood? Are you scared to look at it? Are you acquainted with it? That's beautiful. Went from treating it as ew excretion to now honoring it as the elixir for life. Love that. And I honestly, when I first started this practice, I would see girls put it on their face. I was like, ew, what the fuck? And then as time went on, I'm like, wait, put it on my face. And then as time went on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to taste it. You know what? I'm going to like put a little bit in my food. Like, I don't even, to me, it's, if we can't, like, it's our own body. If we can't get that close with our own body, like, what are we doing? You know? Okay. So, and then allowing the blood to be an indicator for health. So if your blood is this, obviously this color, this is just color taken from Canva. If it's not exactly this color, but you get the gist, like a reddish color, bright cranberry rich red, then that is healthy blood. That's amazing. If your blood is this kind of, brownish, darker red, then usually that means the blood is oxygenating. Or if it's in the beginning of your cycle, you have low progesterone. The flow is too slow, or it could be old blood from a previous cycle. This is not ideal. There are things we could do to kind of help stimulate this. Number one is if it's in the beginning of the cycle and you have low progesterone, there's different herbal supplements and stuff you could take, which I'm going to talk about later. But generally, the beginning of the cycle, low progesterone, you probably have an estrogen dominance, which is the way that I tend towards. And I have to really be on it in terms of monitoring my hormones and making sure that I am consuming things that will help flush the estrogen out of my body and boost my progesterone. And if your flow is too slow and the blood is oxygenating, a really good thing to do this is to yoni steam, because this basically means that your uterus isn't contracting as strong as it needs to while you're bleeding. And there are tonifying herbs that you can take. You could drink it as tea, or again, you could yoni steam that will help tonify your uterus, because your uterus is just a muscle that will help the muscle contraction. So when you bleed, it will happen quicker and your blood won't oxygenate on its way out. And again, old blood from a previous cycle, this could also be happening because a lot of women have tilted uteruses. So then the blood isn't making its way out as it needs to. Dark eggplant purple, this color, and heavy bleeding. This typically means high estrogen. This isn't as common just because we live in a society that has a lot of estrogen mimickers. So most of us kind of tend towards this way, but I mean, obviously this is possible depending on your body. High estrogen. And again, there's things we can do to balance our hormones, which I am going to get into this whole thing about balancing your hormones naturally. But this is the color if you do have high estrogen. If you are this light pink color, which also is pretty common, it could just be very light bleeding, or oftentimes it means you have low estrogen or a nutrient deficiency. And more often than not, light pink also means that you're having sometimes vaginal secretion at the same time as your blood coming out, which again kind of alludes to a hormone imbalance, but again, can be fixed with balancing your hormones naturally. Light orange, this is usually a sign of some type of infection or blood mixed with cervical fluid. And then clots, which is also pretty common, is due to excess estrogen. So really when we bleed, we want this color. We want it to be smooth. We want really no clots. If there's minimal clotting, it's not the worst. But really, if we could just have smooth blood, that there's no clotting in it, and start to finish a nice red color, then our hormones are doing good and happy. Any questions on this? Okay, so getting into our cyclical nature. Women's bodies, like I said, are not supported in the cycles currently upheld by the patriarchal world, because we are cyclical beings. We do not wake up every day, and we are not the same. We have 4 different cycles within a menstrual cycle. And so we do not wake up every day like a man and it's just the same. So the 4 cycles or the 4 phases of our cycle. Winter is when we're menstruating. And so I want you to start to think, as I say these, about the energetics of each of these seasons. So when we're menstruating, it's winter. When it's the follicular phase, it is spring. When we're ovulating, it's summer. When it's luteal phase, it's fall. So with that, our bodies are going through very different things in each phase. There are different hormones. There's this whole crazy fluctuation of hormones that are happening through each phase. And so our bodies are affected physically, our moods are affected, our energy is affected. And so it is very important that we tend to each phase differently, because like I said, we are not like a man. We don't wake up every day and be the same. We are different over these 4 phases. We're going to wake up in our menstrual phase, and generally our energy is a certain way. We're going to wake up in the follicular phase, and our energy will be a certain way. Ovulation and luteal. So the idea is to tend to our cyclical nature. We are tending to each of these 4 phases within our cycle differently, which is, like I said, not like a man who wakes up 365 days a year and his hormones go through the same process every day. So, and the thing about hormonal birth control is they are synthetic hormones that are not going to allow our body to come into the natural cyclical nature of where our bodies wants to go. So to come truly into tune with your cyclical nature as a woman and a feminine bodied being who has a womb, hormonal birth control will not allow you to get there. And obviously, totally respect everyone's choice, and everyone knows what's best for their body. But I mean, if you think about our hormones are a process and system that our body wants to naturally take and do. And if we're taking synthetic hormones or doing something to inhibit this natural process, we are stopping a natural process of our body, which in my head does not sound good. To me, that sounds like, my body wants to take this certain natural process with these different phases and fluctuations. And if I'm taking something that's going to stop that, that probably shouldn't be good for my long-term health. And I'm going to get a little bit more into hormonal birth control, but obviously, like I said, I respect everyone's sovereignty and what they want to do with their bodies, but there are tons of studies in how detrimental hormonal birth control is for us. And then also within that, I had the Paragard for like, I don't know, like a couple years. So that's non-hormonal. So I said, ideally, we don't have foreign non-hormonal devices in our womb space either. I had the Paragard IUD, which is copper, non-hormonal, and it manifested and gave me health issues. So it's just our physical body. We don't want foreign objects in it if possible. It might be okay for you. Paragard might work for you, but there also are a lot of studies, and there's actually even like a class action settlement, I think, for the Paragard. This includes period cups or tampons. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, in terms of like bleeding blissfully. And personally, I don't use anything when I bleed, which I'm going to talk about more, because our bodies just want to, when we think about bleeding, it's a release. So our body like physically wants to release the blood fully out of our system. Like it wants to let it all go. So again, if it works for you to use these things, cups and tampons, that's fine. But there is a physical benefit of allowing your body to fully release the blood. I free bleed, which I will talk about again, but when I tried to use a cup, my body was like, fuck no. Like I literally couldn't do it. And I would have insane cramping. And then also with tampons, I had cramping. So when we have actually nothing there, we don't have cramping because our uterus again wants to release. And so if there's something that's up there and inhibiting the release, the uterus isn't happy. So we'll talk more about free bleeding. Okay, and so I know I've been talking about cyclical nature a lot and this idea of cycle syncing. And so if you're totally new to this concept, it's like, okay, what the fuck is that? What is cycle syncing? Never heard of it before. And just curious, have you heard of cycle syncing before? Yes and no. Okay, cool. So just real quick, cycle syncing is eating, moving, and supplementing and tending to each energetic difference of the 4 different seasons and phases of the cycle. Like I just said, winter, summer, totally out of order. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Cycle syncing also brings natural balance to the fluctuating hormones through the different phases because we're tending to the different cycles or different phases. This supports you in those 3 pillars, mind, body, and spirit. Again, this will balance your hormones naturally. It helps reduce PMS, cramping, acne, headaches, bloat, and other menstrual symptoms related to imbalanced hormones because your hormones will come into a symbiosis and balance naturally. It can help heal disorders, hormonal disorders like PCOS, endometriosis, ovarian cancer, because again, these are basically manifestations of hormonal imbalance. So if we get the hormones in balance naturally, then oftentimes these types of illnesses will go away. They help you detox from synthetic hormones. This is how I detox from being on synthetic hormones for like literally, I don't know, it was like 10, 12 years. Helps you get in tune with your rhythms as a woman, which will in turn inspire more reverence for Earth seasons. It will allow you to come into a deeper honoring and understanding of your body as a womb holder. Because again, we will start to see that our bodies as women are very complex, and to nourish and nurture self in this way helps you understand the deep power that you hold as a womb holder, and just a deeper understanding of yourself as a woman. So, let's see. Yes, curious to see how moon phases play with your menstruation energetics. I will talk about that once we go over the different phases, because this is my favorite part, is studying the way that our bleeds come at different times in accordance with where the moon's at. So anyways, the different phases. If you're unaware of the different phases, this is just a quick run through. So we have, like I said, our menstrual phase, which is winter. The length of time, this is totally different for everybody. It could be as long as 7 days. It could be as short as 2 days, but it starts with your first day of bleeding. What's happening physically is the uterine lining is shedding. All of your hormones are at their lowest, and there are blood-rich nutrients leaving via the blood. So iron, zinc, and magnesium. What exactly is happening energetically? The body and womb is purifying anything from the previous cycle that it's time to release and let go of or die, emotionally, energetically, and physically. So again, when we bleed, it is a time of purification, purging, and release. So with that, keeping in mind, again, that question about using tampons and cups, like totally okay. Like if it doesn't serve your type of lifestyle, but it's like a deep time of purification. And so the body wants to physically release the blood, and having a foreign object there isn't, I mean, it's, there is a benefit to allowing the blood to fully come out of the full vaginal canal. The follicular phase, which is, we would call it our inner spring. So it's after you bleed, and it's when life is kind of coming back. And again, the menstrual phase is like winter. So if you think about the seasons of Earth too, winter, everything is dead. Like the trees no longer have leaves, everything is dormant, animals are in hibernation. It's just a time of rest and going within and moving slow. So then the follicular phase is like spring, and it's like when the flowers are just starting to bloom, and like all the new plants are starting to grow, and all of the animals are coming out of hibernation. And the length of this phase is 10 to 17 days. What's happening in your body is follicle cells in the ovaries are maturing and developing, and one dominant follicle becomes known. And then later, that dominant follicle becomes the egg that you will ovulate. And then the uterine lining starts to build back up after it's been shed. So what's happening energetically in the body and within the womb? Energy is building after the last release. And really, this is kind of like a rebirth time. So again, like thinking about these phases within your body, winter, spring, and then thinking about how they're a direct mirror for the phases that Earth goes through. And then we have the ovulatory phase, which we would call summer. So the length of your ovulatory phase is actually really short. You only ovulate 1 to 3 days. And what's happening during this phase is the dominant follicle is breaking free from the ovary, and it's traveling down the fallopian tube to wait for fertilization, whether or not it gets fertilized. So often we can feel a little bit of cramping during ovulation, because there is movement happening. And what's happening energetically, it's a time of creation. This is, again, this is a window when you could get pregnant. So there's so much creative energy happening at this time. Pheromones are making you magnetic because your body is literally designed to attract a mate during this phase. So again, if we think about summer within nature, is everything's really just like popping, everything's alive. And even if we think about how we feel during summer, like summer, we're like out and about, we're like doing all the things. We're like, ooh, yes, I want to like go hang out with everyone. I want to like, I'm feeling good. And so relating this to that period of time during our moon cycle that is also occurring within our bodies. And then the luteal phase is what we would call fall. So fall, as we know, it's like the leaves are starting to fall off the trees. All of the animals are getting ready to hibernate. Things are slowing down. Whereas in the ovulatory phase, it was like peak energy. Luteal phase, things are definitely slowing down, and it's getting colder outside, and it's just a time to start to get ready to go back into that hibernation. And so the length of time that this is 13 to 16 days. This is a longer phase within our cycle. What's happening physically, our hormones are going from higher levels to a drop towards the end of the phase. And then that drop at the very end of the phase is what triggers our bleeding. And if a sperm met the egg during ovulation phase, the egg will implant and build up the uterus lining to implant to start growing the baby. Otherwise, the body prepares to shed the uterine lining that was built up over this cycle and shed the egg, which is when we bleed. And what's happening energetically, the body is either preparing to develop a baby or to go into shedding again. Lots of energy is being used. Hormones are shifting and preparing for a new death. So again, it's like the energy went from really high peak during summer, and then it's starting to fall in the luteal. And there is a lot of energy being used in terms of the hormone shifting. So that's why we could get really tired during the luteal phase. And the whole idea behind PMS is that dip of hormone shift at the end where we just get really fucking tired right before we bleed. I don't know if that happens to you, but that for sure happens to me. Oh, what's going on? Okay, so now how do we best support our phases? This would be good stuff to write down. This is like the real good meat of it, of how to cycle sync. So basically there are pillars, like I said, mind, body, spirit. And this is for sure a lot of physical pillar right here. So during the menstrual phase in winter, again, the energetic is it's a lot of rest. Like when we are bleeding, we are really supposed to just not do anything. Like we are supposed to be resting. We are supposed to be in bed and going within and just allowing the shedding, because it's a lot on your body. You're literally bleeding for multiple days. Like we are supposed to just take a pause and allow the shedding to occur, because there is an internal death happening within our body and we need to honor the death. And again, say it so many fucking times. The world we live in this like patriarchal paradigm, it does not honor death. There's no honoring of death. There's no honoring of winter. In the world we live in, there's no such thing as winter. It's constant creation. We're in a constant spring and summer phase. There's no winter. So the most radical thing we could do to say fuck the patriarchy is to honor our winter, honestly. And stopping, resting, and that allows you to tap into the power of the bleed. So again, rest, hibernation, going within. During this time, physically, we aren't working out hard. We're stretching, we're meditating, we're doing yin yoga, we're resting. I straight up don't do anything. I lay on the grass, I look at the clouds. That's what I do when I bleed. I literally just slow the fuck down. Nourishment, because we are losing blood, we need a lot of things that are going to be warming and nutrient dense. So stuff like red meat, healthy fat, fibrous veggies, chickpeas, lentils, beets. It's really important that we are nourishing our bodies with the minerals that we're losing through our blood. So magnesium is super important. Stuff like kale, chard, and cabbage, omega-3s, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, avocado. Also, vitamin C is super important. Stuff like very colorful citrus, peppers, berries, broccoli, and then zinc is also very important. And kelp and nori are just like, if you're into seaweed, eating seaweed when you're bleeding is A1. And then when we are bleeding also, there are herbs that can help replenish some of the things that are being lost. So wow, I cannot talk today. Red raspberry leaf is a tonifying herb for the uterus. So again, this herb is one of those herbs I was talking about if you have a tendency to have brown blood because it's being oxygenated before it exits. It's really good to tonify the uterus, which is going to build the muscle, which will help the uterus contract more to release the blood quicker. Release the blood quicker. So you could have red raspberry leaf tea. Ginger is really great. Nettle, again, it's a super nutrient dense herb. So it has tons of minerals in it, which is good for the minerals you're losing. And shatavari is another really good one. During the follicular phase, this is spring. Again, so it's like our rebirth a little bit. And the one thing I want to stress about the follicular phase is it's not like full systems go summer, ovulatory phase. It is like new life blooming, and it's like budding flowers. The flower isn't fully bloomed, but it's like the bud is there now. And so it's like the energy is building. It's not like, okay, we're out of the hibernation. It's go time. It's a slow burn. So the creative juices are starting to flow and you are emerging out of your hibernation. So physically, we can support our bodies with like light cardio. We're not going ham. We're just kind of going light, you know, especially as we just come out of our winter phase. So very light cardio, stuff like dance. And then again, ramping up our movement intensity, but not too intense. We don't want to push too hard because we are slowly emerging out of our cocoon. Nourishment wise, stuff like that's really fresh and vibrant and light, lean proteins, fermented food, probiotic rich foods, juices, smoothies, and antioxidants are really good. Again, zinc to help replenish what was lost during the menstrual phase. Choline, and here's all kinds of good stuff you can consume: eggs, fish, shellfish. Fiber is really important during this phase to help flush out some estrogen. And then again, it's like if you think about, when you think about the types of foods that you eat during different seasons, I hope that you can kind of start to see that like in menstrual phase, it's like, what do I eat during winter? Heavier, warmer, dense foods. What do I eat during spring? I start to lighten up in terms of what I eat. So you're just really following the seasons and what you're kind of intuitively drawn to help support the seasons that are occurring within your body during 1 month. So herbs for this phase: turmeric, I can never say that right, turmeric, shatavari, nettle, dandelion root. Dandelion's super good for flushing your liver. And again, if we tend towards estrogen dominance or excess estrogen, not enough progesterone, dandelion and black cohosh are both really good for flushing out excess estrogen from our bodies. Any questions on these two phases? Again, you could always just put it in the chat anytime any question comes up. Ovulatory phase, again, summer. Like, what do we eat during summer? Super light. How do we support ourselves during summer? We kind of do like more intense stuff. So the energetic during summer, this is, like I said, the flower is now fully bloomed. We have a lot of energy. We're out and about. Creative juices are peaking. And we really have this energy of like wanting to be external. How does one layer climate seasons with body internal seasons like winter outside? I'm ovulating. Should I eat wintry foods or be drinking juices? It does. So here's the thing is, it's like nature goes through her, I actually said this to somebody and they're like, holy shit, Mother Nature goes through her whole menstrual cycle is a year for us. But we as women, because we're like, we have 1 year of seasons within 1 month of our cycle. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. If you're trying to eat seasonal on top of period seasonal. Well, I mean, I guess seasonally eating, like you can be eating seasonally in terms of like what produce is in season. But then again, like how you prepare the produce, I would say that is how you can tailor it with your cyclically eating for your cycle and supporting Yes, exactly. Raw versus cooked. Because the thing is, with in the follicular phase and the ovulatory phase, it's when we tend to like create more estrogen. And so a thing that really helps with flushing estrogen out of the body is eating raw foods. So fresh foods help flush estrogen. And because we live in, like I said, a world that is there's estrogen mimickers pretty much everywhere with all like the toxic chemicals and stuff, that we tend towards estrogen dominance. Most women have more estrogen in their bodies and have a hard time producing progesterone. And in order for the body to produce more progesterone, we need to flush out the excess estrogen. There's got to be this balance. So, yeah, it's important to really during ovulatory and follicular to be eating fresher, lighter foods, raw foods, because that fiber helps flush out the estrogen. Okay, so like I said, ovulatory phase, things are blooming. It's like more external energy is being shared. We want to be out and about, and there's almost this like, just how you know how it feels in summer. We always like want to be going out and stuff in summer. Physically, because our energy is peaking during this time, this is the time that you do high intensity workouts. Stuff that's like really going to get your heart rate up and just really get the blood pumping. Whereas the other two phases, honestly, most of the phases, we're not really doing a lot of high intensity stuff, because for women, high intensity stuff isn't always the best. So, but during the ovulatory phase, high intensity, really good because you have the energy. And then nourishment wise, again, colorful, raw, light, and fresh foods to help flush out excess estrogen. Like I said, fiber, really good to help flush out estrogen. Glucosionates. I can never pronounce anything right. But again, these are like really fibrous types of things that are going to help create the balance of estrogen and progesterone in your body. And then, as we know, pre and probiotics are super important because our gut health is the number one thing that supports our hormone health, because our gut health is what tells our brain to release certain hormones. So we need to make sure that our gut is supported in order to support our hormones. And then herbs that are very beneficial during this time are schizandra berry, nettle, and shatavari. And then, so yeah, that's summer. A lot of like salads, juices, raw foods, things that feel like this kind of food you eat during the summer, but you can be using produce that's seasonal for that period of time. And then finally, the luteal phase is fall. So again, we think about the energetic of fall. It's like everything is preparing to go within, everything is slowing down, things are starting to retreat. And it's a really good time if you're working with your energy in terms of like how you show up for work or creation. This is a really good time to start kind of completing things on your to-do list before you go into your resting phase and the menstrual phase again. So it's just a good time to just, okay, I have like, I'm going to start bleeding on the 4th. I'm going to just go through all my shit, knock it out. So that way I could really rest. And that is kind of the energy. It's like tying up loose ends during the fall. Physically, we can kind of start with slow and steady weightlifting and power yoga. It's just, we're really using like muscle power during the beginning of the luteal phase. And then we really, as we get closer and closer to our actual bleed, we want to ramp things down and slow things down that are going to allow our body to prepare for that rest stage. And that's what our hormones need during that phase. Nourishment wise, again, thinking about fall foods. What do we eat during the fall? We're going to start to eat more like slow burning complex carb, nutrient dense foods. Stuff with tryptophan in it is really supportive. Omega-3s, magnesium is super important. And yeah, just everything that's kind of like the foods are starting to warm up. It's not as raw and light. It's a little bit more dense and warmer, just as we eat in the fall. And then herbs that support this phase: schizandra berry, shatavari, cinnamon, raspberry leaf, ginger. This is a typo. It's supposed to say vitex. Vitex, or chasteberry is what it's called. Which vitex and that herb chasteberry, it is a herb that is really beneficial for boosting progesterone. So if you tend towards an estrogen dominance, like I said, you will have a harder time producing progesterone. So Vitex is like the herb for helping with progesterone. And as I said, most women tend towards their bodies not flushing estrogen out enough and not being able to produce enough progesterone. So Vitex is really good to take. Wild yam is another one that you could take during this phase. And I would also say that Vitex, if you have a tendency to have a difficult time producing progesterone, you could take it throughout the whole cycle besides when you're bleeding. That's something I take pretty regularly to help support me throughout, because like I said, I tend towards the estrogen dominance and my liver has a hard time flushing out estrogen. So I take Vitex to help boost progesterone regularly. So those are the 4 phases. This is how we support the 4 phases. Any questions with that? And I can send this graphic so you have it, because it's good to have like on your phone. If you go grocery shopping, it's good to have like, just so you know, like what your body needs at that period of time. Okay, cool. Okay, so now, yes, totally. Interested in the throat and sacral chakra connection, like practices to do with your throat near menstruation. Yeah, like we'll get into more of like these. I wanted to like hit the physical pillar, and then we're going to get more into like the spiritual pillar in terms of how to support your body like when you're bleeding. But it's interesting because I lately have been really feeling like I've been singing a lot when I'm bleeding, because it feels like because again, the throat and the yoni are energetic chakra twins. So I've just felt like in order to help the release that's occurring within my womb, like vocal toning has been really good. Singing, I have rage ceremonies. I scream into a pillow. However you feel like you want to release from your throat. Okay, so with awareness now of your own phases as a woman, now that we've kind of gone through the phases and we understand how we have within our bodies a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter, and that's just in one span of a month or one moon cycle. Can you understand more about how little we honor the phases and the seasons of Earth, especially in the way we use her resources and force her to produce constantly? And if you think about the mass agricultural world, how a lot of the crops are monocrops, and it's like we're making spinach all year. We're making this all year. And literally, there are seasons that Earth has in which she's supposed to be producing at a certain time, and she's supposed to be resting at a certain time. But in this way, we're forcing her to produce constantly and like literally not honoring the season of fall and winter in her. We're not honoring the death. Like I said, I feel as a society, we don't honor death. We don't honor the phase of grieving. We don't honor the phase of release because we're scared of it in this weird way, because we're scared of the feminine in this world we live in. And the feminine comes with this cycle, the cycle of life. It's a cycle, there's death. And a lot of our society is afraid of that because it's a deep plunge into the underworld, and to accept that to live is to also experience death. And it's just something that occurs here. It's part of it, but we're so afraid of it. So, and then also as women, we aren't meant to live on a 24-hour production clock like most of the world is geared towards. And so I'm just curious how that hits with you now that there's a little bit more awareness of the cyclical nature that we carry as women within our bodies and the external mirror of how it doesn't exist in the world. I feel like the more we start honoring our cycles, the more our womb shows up and allows us to bleed in sync with our masculine demands. Yep, I won't bleed during an important event, 100%. Okay, so like I said, wanted to touch more on hormonal birth control. So, I mean, obviously some people want to be on hormonal birth control. That is their decision, but there are so many studies about how disrupting birth control is for our gut and our hormones, because hormonal birth control, it affects the gut. And as we know, the gut is it's our second brain. It really is kind of our first brain, if you think about it, because it tells our brain which hormones to release for our life, for the things that we need to do. So synthetic hormones are extremely disrupting to the gut. So they're going to disrupt our hormones. Ooh. Right, exactly. So, and the thing is too, is like hormonal birth control, it just masks a hormone imbalance. Like personally, I went on hormonal birth control when I was 17 because I was having hormonal acne. And I was like, I don't want this. And I went to the doctor and they're like, oh, you can get on hormonal birth control. It'll help balance it. Versus them saying, okay, you have a hormone imbalance. How do we heal this for you? And instead, let's like take this Band-Aid, slap it on, and the wound will still be there and it will continue to fester, but at least the Band-Aid's covering it up. And instead of actually addressing the root cause of why I have a hormonal imbalance or why we have hormonal imbalances, they just mask it and they make it so like your body doesn't actually have a chance to heal, but instead it has this weird like numbing and mask on it for years that when I got off hormonal birth control just made things way worse. And then again, cycle syncing, supplementing with herbs, moving in accordance with your phases will balance your hormones naturally with no need for hormonal birth control. Because we are, which I wrote down here, we are only actually fertile six days out of the month of your cycle. And so we can't actually get pregnant. Like you can't get pregnant when you're bleeding. It's very it's likely, but it's very not very likely to happen. It's possible. Nothing's impossible, but the chances of that happening are really slim because your body is not in a physical state for that to happen because of what's going on in terms of where the egg is, where it's at, and what's happening in your womb. And again, like I said, I had the experience with the Paragard IUD, the copper IUD. It can lead to copper poisoning. They have, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but they have settlements out. And in my experience, it caused my womb to overproduce endometrial cells that began to eat away at the device. And it literally started to become adhered to the walls of my uterus because my body was like, this foreign object is not fucking supposed to be here. So everyone's body is different, but the womb is such a sacred space, remembering that it is a portal to God. It literally brings spirit into form. It is the womb. It's a mirror to the womb of creation. It's a mirror to the womb of Gaia. So to put a man-made device in that space that is so sacred, my womb knew better. She was like, bitch, no, I don't want this here. Like, this is a sacred space. Like, how dare you put a sacred space? How dare you put some foreign fucking man-made object in this sacred space? And so it began to be eaten away in my body. And I had so many crazy, now having it out, I realized that I had all of these weird symptoms that it was because that was in me. So I'm all for natural. I don't really want some fucking weird man-made device in my body. And I'm pretty sure I've Googled it before that actually a man was the one who invented the IUD, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but pretty sure a man invented the IUD. Well, here's the thing is crystal wands and jade eggs and those kinds of things, they're not living in your body. And as we know, crystal holds a resonance that like you can program and you can, I mean, they have like beneficial energetic properties, right? So, I mean, we're not like chilling with like a jade egg in our, I mean, you really aren't supposed to put that in there for more than a couple hours. But I mean, the copper IUD and these other IUDs, like the plastic IUD and stuff, those are sitting in there for like the copper IUD you could have in there for like 10 years. So, and again, like the resonance of a copper man-made IUD to stop pregnancy, if you just think energetically, the resonance and the consciousness of that device versus a device like a jade egg, which is to like clear energy from the womb, and it's like for the highest good. And like a crystal wand, which is to bring pleasure. And like if you have a rose crystal wand, it's like to bring love, or to like if it's a obsidian to like pull out harmful energies. It's a definite different vibration than a IUD. Yeah. And then so within that, just talking about hormonal birth control is the way to really get in touch with, again, like your phases as a woman is to chart your cycle. So if you're not aware yet of, I mean, all these things like, okay, ovulatory, follicular, luteal, menstrual, that sounds cool, but like, how do I know when that's happening? Charting your cycle is the way that we do this. I'll show at the end, I have like a little thermometer that I use to chart my cycle. But also within that, when we chart our cycle, we get aware of our body's patterns, we get aware of the phases, we get really in tune with our cycle and our phase and our phases. And also like, I chart my cycle so I can know when I'm fertile. Like I chart my cycle so I can know like when I should not be having unprotected sex, period. And I also like to know like, oh my gosh, I feel like a little bit of ovulation cramps, like I'm feeling like a little movement. And then I check my chart and it's like, oh yeah, I'm ovulating right now. Cool. So like what I'm feeling is for sure like the egg breaking off from my ovary and like moving down towards my uterus, which I think is cool because I'm a nerd. And I also like to know when my bleed's coming because then I can prepare. And then, like I said, you're only fertile 6 days of your cycle. Yes, this is different than a period tracker app. Yes, because you use I don't know if you could see me right now. I don't think you can. I'll show you at the end. I have a little thermometer. Oh, you can. Cool. I have a little thermometer, and there is an app that goes with this thermometer. It's called Femometer. And I have like a whole list of things that you can purchase to support your cycle. But this little thermometer, and I use it every day. And then I upload it to this app, and you can get ones that are more fancy. This was $10 on Amazon. And then the app I pay, I think it's like $20 a year. But you upload it, you upload your temperature. You can have a more fancy one that has Bluetooth that will automatically just go, but I'm cheap. So I just upload, I put my temperature in. You could put in different symptoms that you're having. Like another thing too, is it's like with this process of charting your cycle, like again, like just getting so acquainted with your womb and your yoni. Like I check my cervical fluid. How much, like, what's a cervical fluid like? Again, because I don't have this in this masterclass, but like, are the different types of cervical fluid we are having are indicators of what phase we're in. So when we're ovulating, it's almost like egg white fluid. And I'm sure you've seen pictures of it, but it's like, it's really sticky. And then sometimes we don't have any fluid. And then sometimes like this is happening or that's happening. But within that app, you could also, another thing that they provide, which if you're comfortable with, which I do also, is like checking how high up your cervix is, because how high or low your cervix is tells you what phase of your cycle you're in. So that's why this app is really cool, because there's all these different things you can input and kind of explore with your body, and explore in terms of like you're just getting curious about this stuff. Because before I started doing this, I literally would just like I just be like, I don't know what the fuck's going on down there. I'm not gonna stick my finger up my yoni, like what the fuck. But it's just like getting really acquainted with your body, you know? And yeah, and just like it's just a cool thing to like know that as a woman you're going through all these different things and you don't even realize, but your body, it's like it's moving your cervix up and down, excreting different fluids. And so this guy does all that stuff. So now we will get to a little bit more of, let's see what time it is. Cool. The spiritual aspect of things, and like the deep womb study about our menstrual cycle. So like ancient traditions used to really honor womb, like the womb, and just in general, like menstrual blood. Like it wasn't looked at as gross. It was looked at as super holy and sacred. And so there was all of these feminine teachings in early cultures, excuse me, and mostly because they understood deeply the power of the womb, because it is a direct connection to spirit, and it's the portal that brings spirit into form. And when we're bleeding, the portal and the veil between the physical and the spiritual is thin, very, very thin. Because if you think about, like, our womb is opening when we're bleeding. Our womb is allowing blood to come out of our body. So it's like the veil is literally open. So feminine teachings in early cultures, like they knew this and they respected it. And so this is why menstrual blood was like revered, and it was like seen as super powerful. And also that's why they saw the womb as powerful. Whereas now these teachings have been erased, and this weird programming has occurred when we think of these things as being gross. And in indigenous cultures, I'm sure if you know this term, but it would be the red tent. So women would tend to all bleed together. As we know, as women, a lot of times when we're with other women, our pheromones match up or kind of sync together, and we bleed together. So because they lived in tribes, the women would generally all bleed together, and they would traditionally bleed usually on, and who knows, I didn't live then, so I don't know what happened every time, but they would generally more so bleed on the new moon, because their circadian rhythm, if your circadian rhythm is really attuned to the moon and the natural cycle of the moon, you will bleed on the new moon. But because we live in a time where there's blue light, our circadian rhythm is like pretty off, because the only light used to be the moon or firelight. We didn't have artificial lighting and all that stuff. And that affects our hormones. So they would always bleed with the new moon. And so they would all bleed together. They would go off, and they would essentially, it would be like the men would create a red tent for them. And it would be like, this is the place that the women go to bleed. And the importance of this time is because they are connecting to spirit. It's a rite of passage when they're bleeding. The veil is thin. They're getting messages in from spirit. And these messages are going to help guide our people to safety. So a woman would be like, we need to plant crops on like with this plant in this day, because they would be connecting to their moon time, and they would all be bleeding together and be getting these messages in. And then they would guide the tribe based on the messages they would get. So like, we need to not be here anymore because there's going to be danger. And the men would be like, okay, and trust that, because they understand the power of the womb and that it's a connection to spirit. Oh, excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Anyway, so the women would gather together and literally just their oracles would be open. They would channel and they would use the messages they would get to guide the tribes. And so this is the old ways of honoring moon time and why they thought of it as so sacred. Whereas now that is gone. Indulging in substances during your moon time. Yeah, I mean, I don't drink generally. I have heard that because I was gonna sit in a plant medicine ceremony when I was bleeding, and the woman that was facilitating it was like, it's not a good idea because you're just so open and the veil is super thin that it could just be a little like not exactly it could be too much, you know? But yeah. I mean, so don't do shrooms and bleeding. It's totally up to you. I mean, you can, but the veil already is thin as fuck. So it could just be even thinner, which if you are equipped to handle that, I think it's okay. But again, totally your discernment, but like there's no right or wrong, right? There's no yes or no, but it's just good to think about like energetic like boundaries and energetic safety. Like if you're gonna have like go into some type of ceremony, like really making sure that you are like energetically creating boundaries and prayer to really keep you in energetic sovereignty, I guess, you know? So quite curious, do you honor your moon time? Especially in the ways that I just spoke about within how indigenous cultures would honor moon time, and also with the cyclical nature in mind of everything I just shared. What's your practices? Yeah, and that's all good. Could be better. And that's why I'm here to share with you the things I do. So that way maybe you're inspired to honor your womb time or your moon time more. So like I said, when I honor my moon time, like I feel like I straight up drop into like a different dimension. Like I don't even know how to describe it. Like it's just like I literally feel like I'm orgasming through life. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, yes. And I mean, I have to admit that like, I do have the luxury and the privilege to say like, I'm not going to work right now. And I know everyone doesn't have that luxury and that privilege. So I just want to state that like straight up, like, but again, like, there are things that we can do because it's just a choice, right? So like, how can we like work around what we have to do and how we have to show up like within this like patriarchal paradigm world that doesn't really honor the cycles? And how could we like make small choices to just be like, okay, well, I want to actually like honor this time a little bit more. I'm going to have a little bit less on my calendar. I'm going to do like the bare minimum. And then hopefully eventually, like I pray that the world eventually one day, like women should be able to take time off when they're bleeding. Like that's just how shit should be. Like women shouldn't have to be required to like go into work. And I know that there are some companies that are starting to do this, but I hope and I pray that as we continue to like honor the cyclical nature of women and the cyclical nature of Earth, that this will become more top of mind for the rest of the world, and we can give more space for women to honor their moon time. So a day in my moon time, like I said, I fucking rest. I clear my schedule. I literally I cancel plans. Like I might tomorrow be like, I might have plans with somebody and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna go do this. And then if I start bleeding, I'm like, hey, I can't do it. And I'll just completely just cancel plans. And I hibernate the fuck up. I honestly, because the womb is open and the veil is thin, we also need to think about the fact that we are more energetically sensitive when we bleed. Like we straight up, like it's not good to be around a ton of people when we're bleeding because we're open, and we can be around more women. That's why indigenous cultures did the red tent, because all the women were kind of on that same energetic frequency and bleeding together and open together. So it was a little bit more energetically, like, I don't want to say safe, but like energetically supportive. But we really just, we really should be hibernating if we can. I take that time to not really go on my phone much. I just really want to be present, because when we're present, obviously we know is when we have the ability to like really have messages come in. And I connect with myself so deeply. And I honestly, I don't really meditate generally, but when I bleed is the time that I meditate. Like I do some just like energy clearing practices in the morning, but when I bleed, I sit in a state with my eyes closed and I meditate and I go within, because I know that during that time I am open, the veil is thin, spirit's going to want to communicate with me. Again, how do I nourish my body with warming and comforting foods, and the thing is to like, obviously I know this is hard, but they also say that like when we're bleeding, we're not actually supposed to be cooking. Like we're supposed to be resting. So if you have a significant other or someone that could cook for you, or just a friend or someone that could cook for you, that's amazing. Or you can like pre-make some of your food, so that way you're not like laboring in the kitchen. That would be great. So then you can really be present and drop into your body and just like be in like the rest of it. I like to really get in my body, because again, my physical body is releasing. So how can I use my tools and do things to also help facilitate the release in my body? So I mean, I movement is a big thing for me. I usually will have like a rage ceremony. I will usually like do some type of movement that will help touch into like really dense, heavy emotions that can be moved through me. Also, like we said, throat connection. Like if you feel called to sing or scream or vocal tone, this is a really good time, because it's all about everything releasing out of the body. Stretching, again, like self massage and deep tissue work is really good to do, because as we know, we store trauma within the muscles. So if we can do some deep tissue work to release calcification and adhesion in the muscles, which is stored emotional trauma, it's a really good time to do this as well. Self massage, I do that too, just like with beautiful, nice oils, and really just take care of yourself and like feel your body, and like, again, self massage to help release some of the trauma in the body. I do ritual baths, love a ritual bath. I highly suggest rosemary is really good for ritual baths, because it's a purification herb. Mugwort, sage, you can put in a bath. Roses are always good, because roses are love, which we always want more love. And then also free bleeding, which I want to talk about, get really deep into, because like I said, like the body is releasing, and there is, if you think about energetically, like the blood is meant to come fully out of the yoni. So putting a tampon in is not fully allowing that process. Putting a cup in, also not fully allowing that process. And in my experience only, could be totally different for you, but when I tried to do a cup, like I said, I had cramps, like really bad cramps. When I used tampons, always had cramps. And once I started actually free bleeding, I have no cramps. I don't cramp at all when I bleed. Like if I'm having a really intense release energetically that needs to happen, I might have some cramping, but really I don't have cramping. And also, the more I rest and lay down, the less cramping I have, because we're really supposed to just lay down and chill. But free bleeding has been such a powerful practice for me, because then I start to see how much blood is coming out, and I can also kind of understand like, wow, this bleed I'm releasing a lot. Like there's a lot of blood coming out of me, and I could see it in my underwear or see it when I go pee. And and it helps me understand that like this last cycle there was a lot that my womb wanted to release for me. And so the free bleeding is what allows me to really connect with the whole intention of the bleed. And you can have free bleeding underwear. That's what I use. I have at the end there's some info about free bleeding underwear, but it's just underwear that has basically like non-toxic materials in it to help absorb the blood, and which is also really good for if you want to do blood offerings with your blood. um, or you could just, I just read about this, like, which I'm going to start doing, is just wild bleeding, which is like, I'm not even going to wear underwear. I'm just going to let myself bleed all over myself, because this is how we used to bleed. This is how animals bleed. Like, underwear is good still too, but like, we're supposed to just fucking savage bleed, really. And again, like, obviously I know it's a luxury to not have to go anywhere and not have to see anyone, or to not have to show up in work or be at school or anything. But like, animals just bleed, and they don't have a job to go to because they're animals. We're animals. And the world that we live in and the structures within constant production, again, patriarchal capitalism, is what keeps us from the natural way that we are supposed to be as women. I don't know how many times I could say this, but um, do you change the location where you give blood depending on what's coming up during your bleed, i.e. water, slow? I just let yourself intuitively kind of go with what feels good. Like, I have a tendency to, because here on Maui, there's a valley called Iao, and it's a really sacred valley that it's the feminine side of the island. So I always have this tendency, and I've noticed since I've been here, like, I go to give blood offerings different places, but for some reason it doesn't, I forget. And whenever I go to Iao, I remember. So I just have a tendency to like give an offering where it feels most resonant. So wherever you feel most resonant to give an offering, totally up to you. But when I do offerings with my blood, when I have the free bleed panties on, like, I basically get like a big bowl of water, and once I'm done bleeding, I put the underwear in the water, let it soak just to kind of like loosen stuff up. And then I just squeeze it out, and it becomes bloody water. And then I put it in a jar, and then I take it to wherever I'm going to have an offering. Or if you're doing it at your house, you can take the bowl and put it outside in the soil, or you can put it wherever you want. But it's totally just where you feel you want to give a offering to. And again, also, I want to like say this too, with like blood offerings, like, blood is like a very powerful manifestation, like, substance. It's literally our DNA. Like, with offerings, like, we are here for the highest light, the highest good. Like, we are not using our blood to like give offering to create some type of karma, or like, just want to say that, like, we're not here to use our blood offering for nefarious reasons. Like, the blood is to pour back into the earth. And when I give an offering, I just say, I don't even say, here's what I want to happen. I say, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to live here. And thank you for supporting me and loving me. And I fully trust in where I need to be led when I give an offering. It's not like, I pray that this will happen, blah, 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 da, da, da. And using the blood as like a tool to like get what I want. You know what I'm saying? And then also when I bleed, like I said, I like come into like deep contemplation, and the way I connect with my blood allows me to like understand and feel into what's shedding. I journal. I do a tarot spread, which I have on my Instagram that I can share. That is just like a 6-card spread, just to kind of feel into like what's being shed with this release. And because I think a lot of times we don't even understand that like our bodies are doing what they need to for a reason. And there's always an intention with every bleed. And it's been really interesting for me to like explore this and utilize stuff, which I'm going to talk about, like astrology and human design and gene keys, to really understand deeply what the intention of the bleed is. Like I said, use astrology, human design, and gene keys to fully explore the theme of the release and the initiation. And so again, our womb is so intelligent, and like our bleed will come when it needs to in accordance with what's happening astrologically, cosmically, and within our lives. And we could really, the more that we have this practice of listening to the womb and listening to like what's coming up in the bleed, we will start to see that our body's always working for us and with us. And I don't know how many times I've bled after like it's just so interesting the times that I bleed. Like I think it was when I bled in December, I literally broke up with my ex-boyfriend that morning, and then I bled that afternoon. She knew, okay, it's time to release. When I broke up with I was engaged and I had a fiance, and him and I broke up in January of 2021. And I was in our old house and I was packing my shit up, and my bleed was late. I was like, where the fuck is it? Like, what's going on? And as soon as my stuff was all packed, I left the house, I started bleeding. So it's like our womb knows. And so once we like kind of take time to really honor it, then we could like get to know why it's here. And also, hold on. Also, like when we bleed, it is, like I said, this needs to move, sorry. It is a super powerful time to like tap into creation. The stillness that we take when we bleed that comes from the rest gives space for the portal to open, and for you to really tap into your oracle and how spirit wants to work through you in whatever capacity that is for you. And like how we are here to create for spirit. And that is always when I bleed, is when like ideas come to me for what I need to be doing to help, like to create. So that is a day in my bleed. And I think once we kind of unlock the power of the bliss with the bleed, is when we really can tap into the power of the bleed and how we can utilize this process we go through and release. Because again, as we always hear the cliche shit, we release to create more room. And so when we really fucking just let the release happen, we honor the release, we tap into what's releasing and just like let it go through these couple days that you're bleeding, is when it creates space in your body and your womb and your fucking auric field for things from spirit to come in. That's like direction. Here's what you need to do. And like, here's what I want you to create. So that is the power we can tap into with bleeding. And then, like I said, we can go deeper within the themes of, wow, I'm really good at spelling. We can go deeper within the themes of like what's coming up in this bleed by using these tools like astrology, human design, and gene keys. So like I said, your womb knows exactly when you're supposed to bleed in accordance with what's going on with the moon, because your bleed is, like we know, it's called the moon cycle. It's tied to the moon because the moon alters the waters of the earth, and our blood is just water in our body, right? So different influences of the moon will allow basically what we need to be shed to be released, and our womb knows, in accordance with where the moon is, when to give us our bleed to like initiate that release. So basically, I've been doing this for about a year now, and really just, it hit me one day. I think it was actually when I was bleeding. I was like, oh fuck, our womb literally knows when we should be bleeding, and it will happen in accordance with the moon to facilitate a certain release. And none of it's a mistake. Like I will bleed on a certain day because I need to bleed on that day. And how can I like know more about why I need to bleed on that day? So I started tracking what sign the moon was in when the day, like right when I start bleeding. And then in accordance with their astrology chart. So say the moon, we just had the most recent full moon was in Virgo. So say if you started bleeding on the full moon. So you would then go look at your astrology chart, which I will show you. You look at your astrology chart and then you see what house that corresponds in your astrology chart. And likely, I'm not saying it's 100% every time, but it will give you some clues as to the theme of your release with the blood. So let's see. Oh, wait. I'm not sure if you, whoops, you know how to do this, but let's see. Let me pull up this. Okay. So for example, like I said, say it was, this is my astro chart. Say if it was, you bled on the last full moon, which was in Virgo. So you would look at where Virgo is on your chart. So Virgo is here for me. And then you look at which house rules Virgo. So for me, Virgo rules both my 7th and 6th house. So I generally say it's my 7th house because my sun is in the 7th house in Virgo. So I would be like, okay, so I'm literally bleeding on a Virgo full moon, which rules my 7th house. The 7th house is the house of relationships. So I'm releasing something right now that has to do with relationships and like old ideas or whatever is old that needs to go in this bleed. And again, you could look at any of the signs within your chart and then see which house lines up, find out what the chart means, and then get a little bit of info in terms of what is being released for you in that bleed. Does that make sense? Takes a little bit of practice to like to be able to read the chart and then look at, you know, the house, find out the information on the house. And this is contemplation. Again, just like thinking, what am I releasing with relationships in this? And then also there's different, as we know, there's different moon phases. You might not, right now, I don't bleed on a full or a new moon. I'm like in between, I'm in the waxing moon. So each of these different phases has an energetic meaning as well. So if you're bleeding with the new moon, this is called the White River bleed. And this really is a time of rest, going within, self-renewal. It's also like creator energy. And it's really like the maiden and like the divine mother. And it's again, like white energy of just like purity and like creation. And I was bleeding with the new moon for a while and I felt like so much creative energy coming through. Like I was in a pure creator mode. If you bleed with the full moon, this is called the Red River bleed. This is really like, if you think about it, like if you're bleeding on the new moon, it's like when the moon is dark, there's nothing there. But if you're bleeding with the full moon, it's like the moon is bright and it's shining on the night, right? So because it's shining on all the shadows. So if you're bleeding on a full moon, it's like you're really in a time that you're fucking exploring your shadow self. And it's like the energy of like the healer, the high priestess, and it's like shamanic bleeding. And it's like really like you are shining the light of the moon on all your darkness. And I've noticed that when I bleed with full moons, like I have a tendency to like really be going through like a lot of dark shit that is wanting to be purged out of my body. And it's like a time of like deep shadow work, just generally. Are there different practices to sync up with different phases of the moon? Well, again, like I said, like the circadian rhythm, if you can get your circadian rhythm more in check, which is like really not using a lot of blue light. And unfortunately, we don't live by firelight. We don't live purely by the moonlight. But if you want to like get some certain light bulbs in your house that are going to reduce like that blue light, and I know that they exist, like I think Edison bulbs and that kind of stuff is good for like more natural light. But blue light is what is really thrown off our circadian rhythms. But I also like to say that, like, trust your womb. Like, your womb is gonna like have you bleed when you need to bleed, and to try to alter it. Maybe she wants to bleed with the full moon. Maybe she wants to bleed when it's waxing. And just kind of trusting where it's taking you, and there's a reason for it. And then, like I said, so if you're bleeding on not the full moon or the new moon, there's also different energies within this. This is the waxing moon, which is where I'm at right now. It's called the Pink River. It's when you're transitioning from a period of like really dark shadow work into light. And you're taking that darkness you explored in bleeding with the full moon, and you're transitioning it into like really embodying the strength and the power of the lessons during those cycles. And then if you're bleeding in the waning moon, which is when the moon is like getting smaller and becoming a new moon, you're transitioning from light, from a time of like a lot of light, and exploring the more shadow self. And it's a lot of clearing and releasing before cocooning. So again, it's like you're going from that light transitioning into like more shadow realms. So this is also like another cool thing to look at and like just be aware of, like the cycles within your body and like how you're transitioning through different phases of like knowing self through where your womb wants to give you your bleed. And then going even deeper, we can look at human design and the gene keys. So the human design gates. So you can look at, I don't know if you knew this, but in human design, there's transits, just like there's transits within astrology, because human design is based on transits, astrological transits as well. So we can look at the moon gate. This was taken from a long time ago, but you can look at the moon gate. That is, right when you start bleeding, you can look at the moon gate, and then, okay, so it's 36.6. So you can read about that human design key or human design gate. And that's like what's being activated in the collective at this moment. So that's also being activated in your body. So you can read up and like contemplate that information. And then also the gene keys and the human design gates are the same thing. So this also means this is the 36th gene key. So if you also have the gene key book, or you can look it up online too, you can read a bit about that gene key number to understand the shadow that's coming through to be released. And also like within purging that shadow with this bleed and this release, the more space for the city or the gift to be activated during this cycle for you. And again, this is just all contemplation. It doesn't have to mean this is actually going to happen, but you can contemplate and kind of just think about things and like allow it to maybe like trigger things in your mind and just make you think deeper about yourself. And then again, wanted to talk about different resources and stuff that you can use with getting more connected to your bleed. So like I said, the Femimeter, which is this thermometer on Amazon, $10. And then they also have an app. And then I highly suggest the Flow Living app, because she also has, it's not so much like knowing the cycles, but it's also knowing how to tailor to the different cycles, or sorry, it's not so much knowing the phases, it's about tailoring to the different phases you have. And she can give suggestions, like if you have, if you're having night sweats, or if you're having certain symptoms, you can plug them into the app, and then it spits out like things that are probably happening that are creating the hormonal imbalance to get you more in balance. So I highly suggest her app. She also has a book, which is right here, called Woman Code. And then, like I said, thermometer is just to chart your cycle, like, just see when the different phases are coming. Books to learn more. Womb Awakening, honestly, like every woman needs to read this book in their lifetime. Like it literally is my Bible. It's changed my life. Like everyone that I suggest it to, it completely changes their life. Like it's a deep initiation and opening to womb consciousness. And it's just like the start. Because womb awakening like is, I was telling one of my clients, like, womb awakening is such a crazy process. It's a long process, takes a while. But this book is an initiation into that realm of thinking, and just opens your eyes in such a fucking crazy way that not only women need to read this, but men need to read this too, because this, again, I feel the awakening of the feminine consciousness in the power of the womb is what is going to reverse a lot of the bullshit that we've experienced on this earth. And Woman Code is, it's very scientific. She just talks about cycle syncing. And if you want to learn more about like the knowledge and the science behind the hormones, and like I said, she's the one who has the Flow Living app. And then for free bleeding undies, Isle is a great company. I do not suggest Thinx. Do not get Thinx underwear because there are cancer-causing ingredients in their or materials in their underwear. In the little pad thing that's like under your yoni, like there's like straight up like highly cancer-causing materials. So do not get Isle. Yeah, so with men in their hara, there is an energetic menstruation also. Like they have a hara space that goes through, I mean, their cycle's 24 hours. So like they go through the different phases within a day. But in Womb Awakening, they talk a little bit about the hara. So I haven't studied that a ton. And obviously I'm not a man, so I don't really know what it's like to experience that. But just like the womb is an energetic sponge, and we can absorb different things from our mother's womb, from our grandmother's womb, for our matriarchal lineages, through our sexual partners. A man's hara is also an energetic sponge because, as we know, we all start as women in the womb, and then their reproductive system alters and they become boys. But they have they do have a menstruation period too, you know, like, but again, their cycle's 24 hours. And then in terms of other free bleed undies, Cozy and Spice is also a really great brand. She is on Maui. She's a mother. She's super dope. Her underwear is like literally the most comfortable. I would show you my underwear right now, but they're dirty, so I don't think I'm going to show that. But her undies are super comfortable. They're all organic ingredients. And Isles, I don't know, Isles are not the most comfortable, but I mean, they get the job done. And there's like an extra little pad insert thing that you can put in there if you have heavier bleeds. But Cozy and Spice, hers are really comfy too. So highly suggest those two. Okay. So, and then there's two more slides. So real quick. Connecting with your womb through all the phases. So it's like, yeah, we can connect with our womb when we're bleeding, but it's also important to have this connection when we're not bleeding. So I suggest, like, this is what I do. I have a daily ritual when I check in with my womb and connect and ask her what she needs. And then sometimes it'll be as random as the other day, she was like, get me pineapple. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get her pineapple. And obviously there's probably some like nutritional need. So, and there could be as simple as like, I need to dance right now. I need to go outside. But coming into this deep communion with our womb when we bleed, it also can be carried into the other phases of the cycle. And this is how we support our womb and energetically, spiritually. And so the bleeds can be more blissful. And yeah, and it's just connecting to this space that we have been very much so like forbidden from and told that it's not worth connecting to. And it's just an organ. It's not just an organ. It's portal to fucking God. So curious how you can start to create some type of practice for you or daily ritual to connect to your womb. What does it look like for you? How can you commit to her? You don't need to answer this now, but questions that I can leave with you. And like I said, last slide, if you are craving going deeper, again, bleeding blissfully is just one part of tapping into the full power of our wombs. It's just one small fragment, scratch on the surface of a whole fucking iceberg of womb connection and womb consciousness and womb awakening. And really, I feel to awaken the womb is to go on the heroine's journey, because it's like we leave behind this false, like kind of masculine geared consciousness that we've been told we have to pertain to as women, and go through this whole journey of going on this search and learning and blah blah blah. And it eventually, as the heroine or the hero's journey does, it brings us back home into our bodies, and knowing that everything we searched for has existed here in the body all along, and has existed in our womb all along. And like, this body is the temple and God lives here. So this journey of my womb awakening and the womb awakening I have experienced and helped people with, it's like it brings you home into the temple of your body, because this is where God lives. And again, it's not a journey for the weak, because it goes against everything we've been taught, how the world's set up, everything we know. It's a deep fucking unconditioning. It's uncomfortable. It's getting pulled into the underworld, hardcore, looking at all your shadows, all that shit. But it pulls us and initiates us into our soul's truth, like 100%. Like, it's just, you're so deeply tapped into the oracle within and God that this is just how, like, the womb pulls you there. It's outside of logic. It doesn't make sense. Just period. Feminine consciousness, there's no logic to it. It requires just deep trust. And that's really scary sometimes. And I totally understand that. And this process of awakening my womb, sometimes she's asked me to do things that I just was like, what the fuck? Like, I can't even describe. Like, I was asked by my womb 2 years ago to fucking put all my shit in a storage unit, break up with my fiance, pretty much like control alt delete my life, put it in the trash can and start over. And I was taken care of. I had a comfortable home. I had a man that wanted to marry me. I had my life seemingly figured out. And my womb, once I started to awaken her, she was like, no, this isn't in alignment with your truth. This isn't in alignment with what you're here to do. This isn't in alignment with your soul. Like, this is going to suck. It's going to be fucking uncomfortable, but I need you to do this. And just following the breadcrumbs of that since, and it has led me to a life that I fucking dreamed of. And it has led me to like where I'm actually supposed to be and be doing this, and have the courage to actually teach this when it goes against so much of society's norms, and like all the people who thought I was fucking crazy for like putting blood on my face. But she has led me to like the deepest truth that, I mean, it's like, it makes me fucking emotional to think about. And like, this relationship I have with my womb is like, it's the most beautiful relationship. And it is, I fully trust in how she guides me. And I fully know that like, this is my mission on earth, is to help women walk in this process, because it is so uncomfortable. It is allowing yourself to die. It is allowing everything that's not in alignment to die. But then from that decay, and again, honoring the death, which we aren't taught to do in this society, to be the fertile soil that allows the rebirth of like our true self. And so this is 100% my mission here. And that's what I'm here to do. And like, the blissful bleed is only scratching the surface on what that is. And so ways that if you are craving going deeper is I offer a one-on-one initiation container, which is evolving and changing as I learn more about how to support women in this way. Currently, it's a 2-month offering. I might be extending that to be determined. I'm also in the process of creating a womb awakening course, which will be probably a 3-month container. again, the one-on-one work is like really deep, like full support. The container of the group of the class is going to be not as much like one-on-one support. It will be group calls and stuff, but it will be helping walk women through this process. And it takes a long time to unravel this because it's so deeply ingrained in who the fuck we are, to be living in this patriarchal way, which is not aligned with our with our bodies. So it's a lot to undo and unbecome. And it's, so 3 months again is just scratching the surface. But any way that I can help, that's what I'm here for. And also like, just like quick hits is like, the soul contract based astrology and human design readings I do. It's again, it's like for you to become aware and know what it is that is your soul's truth. And it's just giving you the information of here's your soul's truth, and you're going to have to figure out how to embody it on your own, which sometimes it's like that information's good because this is the blueprint and you can figure out and discern how to allow it to manifest and what your womb wants you to go towards. But that work is on you. And if you have the power and the willpower and don't want to be held accountable, that totally works. That was my process. I didn't have anyone to help guide me through it. I like went through it on my own, and it took about 2 years. But the course and the one-on-one work is very much so more like you're going to have someone holding you accountable to these truths that are coming in, and just have someone to walk with you on the process, through the process, because it is a little bit intense to go through alone. Like I went through it with a friend, and thank God we had each other. But had I had to go through this completely alone, like it would have been very difficult, very doable for sure. But it's a shattering of everything you once knew. And that could get, I mean, that's a lot. So that is how I'm here to help moving forward if you crave going deeper into this world. But that is blissful bleeding. And like I said, that is just scratching the surface on the huge iceberg of what this world is. Will I be offering virtual dance sessions? Yes, that will be happening. I'll probably be doing those once a month. I'm going to be offering another type of offering, which I'm still trying to figure out. But that will also, yeah, those will be likely once a month, donation based, whatever. But yeah, this is what I'm here to do. So womb awakening, initiation containers, all these things. And any questions on anything else? Oh, of course. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording then, because that is if there's any questions on ways of going deeper, I'm here to support. Let's end this. How do I stop it? Pause recording. Let's stop recording. Okay.